Splits. Sarah, Hagar, Isaac, Ishmael. Splits between minds and bodies of individuals, projected into competition between classes and peoples. The origin of these divisions can be seen in the story that follows. The story of a single family, the biblical family of Abraham. Father Abram had no children. Abram means father in Hebrew, but he isn't a father. There's a big absence at the center of his life. Princess Sarai, the wife of Abram, was barren. This absence is even more painful for her. Sarai means princess, but if she were to have a child, she might feel more like a queen. Sarai had an Egyptian maidservant named Hagar, which means fugitive. In the story, Sarai and Hagar are two separate women, but symbolically they represent different roles played by one. Sarai is the mind, and Hagar is the body. And this mind-body split occurred years ago in Egypt. This is a picture of Sarai confined within Pharaoh's household back in Egypt. There, she and Abram had traveled because of a famine in their homeland. And because of her great beauty, she was taken by the Pharaoh, thinking she was merely Abram's sister rather than his wife. And because of Sarai, Abram had become rich. So here he is, surrounded by a veritable shower of wealth. And he kept it all when they were kicked out of Egypt for having deceived the Pharaoh. Now, years later, back in their homeland, Sarai said to Abram, "Since I am barren, please take my slave girl to wife, that I might have children through her." It's payback time for what she did for Abram back in Egypt. So here she is at the top, talking down to Abram with Hagar to the side. And Abram hearkened to Sarai, and she gave him her slave girl to wife. So here's the tent with Abram and Hagar hidden inside, and Sarai outside. In the mind-body symbolism, the woman's mind has given her body to her husband in order to have a child. And Hagar conceived, and when she saw she conceived, she looked down on her mistress Sarai. Now Hagar is on top, seen here emerging from the tent of conception and weighing heavily on Sarai's mind. And Sarai said to Abram, "This outrage done to me is your fault." So here she is confronting him with Hagar to the side. And basically she is saying, "You value what my body can do more than my mind." And Abram said to Sarai, "Your maid is yours. Do with her as you please." And Sarai said, "The Lord judge between me and you." With the head and wings of an angel above, mind and body face off. And Sarai treated Hagar harshly. Hagar at the center now has a really big jar to carry, with Sarai written all over it. And she fled from the face of her mistress. Hagar is shown here in duplicate, leaving broken work jars behind as she flees. The body becomes uncomfortable in pregnancy and is put out of mind. The angel of the Lord found Hagar by a spring of water in the wilderness. The angel now addresses her pregnant condition, as she cannot yet see the spring at her feet. The angel said to her, "Hagar, maid of Sarai, return to your mistress and submit to her." So Hagar hears exactly what she doesn't want to hear. Do all that heavy work under Sarai's supervision. But as bitter as it is, the body will at least be fed. The angel also said, "I will so greatly multiply your descendants that they cannot be counted for multitude." The center she is standing on suddenly explodes into a multitude of generations reaching out to a brilliant future. "And you shall bear a son, and call him Ishmael," which means God hears, because God heeds your affliction. God hears the needs of the body, and Ishmael will represent primarily the body of the child that is to come. He shall be like the wild donkey whose passion cannot be tamed. The body, with all its God-given reflexes and instincts. His hand shall be against every man, and every man's hand against him. He will be ungoverned by rules and inhibitions, and this will lead to conflict. And she called the Lord God of seeing. For she said, "Have I really seen my descendants here?" And the well was called seeing posterity. Hagar stands at a fruitful well of physical vitality, and it looks like she's going to be a soccer mom. And Hagar bore Abram a son, and he called his name Ishmael. So here's the little baby on mother's lap, with his mouth already calling out the needs of the body. Abram is to the side under a tent. Then the Lord said to Abram, "No longer shall your name be Abram, but Abraham. And you shall not call your wife Sarai, but Sarah." So what is this all about? Actually, it's a 3,000-year-old joke, and it's still pretty good, I think. He's being asked to add an H sound to each of their names. Sarah, Abraham. And if you put the two together, you get ha ha, laughter. And the Lord told Abraham, "Sarah shall have a son, and you shall name him Isaac, which means laughter." And Abraham laughed, and Sarah overheard and laughed too, because they thought they were too old to have children. Sarah denied laughing, but she did laugh. And the Lord called her out for lying, the only place in the Bible where the Lord addresses Sarah alone. And the Lord visited Sarah as promised, and did for Sarah as spoken, and Sarah conceived. The baby's body was born from the mother's body, and now baby's conscious mind is to be born from mother's mind. But unlike with the conception of Ishmael, there is no mention of Abraham's involvement. The emergence of consciousness in the infant is to be seen as a miracle, a virgin birth, conceived on a visitation of the Lord. And Sarah bore Abraham a son, and Abraham named him Isaac, which means laughter. So here's the Holy Family with baby Isaac. His parents laughed, and now he laughs. The mind laughs as it makes its connections, sometimes with delight and sometimes with scorn. Isaac grew and was weaned, and on the day he was weaned, Abraham gave a great feast. A great circle of celebration for everyone. Little do they know what is about to follow. And at the feast, the son of Hagar, whom she had borne to Abraham, was mimicking. The Hebrew text actually says he was Isaacing. Up to now, we have thought of the two boys primarily as mind-body aspects of one. But now they are going to be split for good, but at a terrible price. Then Sarah said to Abraham, "Cast out this slave woman with her son, for the son of this slave shall not be heir with my son Isaac." Now Sarah is front and center, really laying down the law, with little Isaac at her feet and Hagar and Ishmael pushed to the side. The mind of the mother will promote the mind of her son, while dismissing the connection between her body and his body, Hagar and Ishmael. And the thing was very displeasing to Abraham on account of his son. So here he is, hugging Ishmael, who is being dismissed by Sarah. Abraham loves that rambunctious side of his son, to say nothing of that side of himself. And God said to Abraham, "Do as Sarah tells you. Through Isaac your descendants shall be named, and I will make a nation of your other son also." Abraham envisions his boys becoming permanently split into separate peoples. Traditionally, Isaac is the patriarch of the Jews, and Ishmael is the patriarch of the Arabs. And though they will both prosper, this still is displeasing to Abraham. At the center, we see only his head, and his hair has turned white. So Abraham rose early, and taking bread and a skin of water, placed them on Hagar's shoulder, and with the child in her care, sent her away. All the figures here are doubled, and Abraham is split in the middle as he dismisses the bodies of his wife and son. It's the dawn of a new day with a dark sun at the center. And she departed and wandered in the wilderness of well 7. So here she is with her child coming down, down, down towards the center, the ultimate pit, well 7. And when the water ran out, she left the child under a bush and went off about the distance of a bow shot, that she might not watch him die. Water here is a metaphor for love. The love that Abraham gave her has run out, and its absence is shown here boring into her forehead as her sour face encompasses the entire scene. And the child lifted up his voice and cried, and God heard his voice. Ishmael, God hears. And the angel of God called to Hagar, Fear not, for God hears. Arise and lift up the lad, for I will make him a great nation. The angel calls down from above, Lift up the lad, who weighs heavily on her head. Then the angel opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water, and she went and filled the skin. Through broken reflections comes a new source of love that was there all along. But like Abraham, her hair has now turned white. And she gave the lad a drink. The source at the center has risen to guide her. The skin is filled. The child drinks and is revived. And God was with the lad, and he grew up in the wilderness and became expert with the bow. The body flourishes in the natural world with reactive precision, the body responding to the reactive mind. And his mother took a wife for him from the land of Egypt. Mother steps aside to make way for a wife from where she came from. And they aren't looking into their own heads. They are looking into the world, ready to react. But those reactions are sometimes inhibited, even disrupted, by the self-conscious, contemplative mind, Isaac. So now we go back to the other half of the story, little Isaac with Abraham. God tested Abraham, saying, Take your only son, Isaac, whom you love, and offer him as a burnt offering on a mountain. Here Abraham envisions his beautiful little boy, a flaming sacrifice. And unlike his previous vision, there is no promise that everything will turn out all right. Abraham did as God said, and he gave the wood to Isaac to carry up the mountain, while he carried the fire and the knife. The logs that Isaac is carrying represent logs of information that he will be tied to at the top. They contain the laws necessary for civilized behavior, which in a broader sense includes all recorded knowledge. For this represents the process of education. Initially, the child doesn't understand what it's all about, and it's often as confusing and even more painful for the parent who lights the way. When they came to the top, Abraham bound Isaac and placed him on the wood. Then Abraham took the knife to slay his son. The ropes represent the discipline necessary to be educated, here derived from Solomon's seal at the center. And a certain amount of threat is frequently needed to educate an often reluctant child. But how far should it go? Did it happen, or didn't it happen? Later, when Abraham leaves the mountain, there is no mention of Isaac. Whereas this certainly represents a rather extreme method for socializing a child, almost everyone everywhere remains to some degree tied to the laws of one's culture, on top of a mountain of culture. In fact, in the Islamic version of the story for the Arabs, it is Ishmael, not Isaac, who is taken up the mountain. Then the angel of the Lord called to Abraham from heaven, "Do not lay a hand on your son, for now I know that you fear God." Here the angel is calling down from above, much like it did to Hagar in the wilderness. Abraham throws up his hands and drops the knives as the fate of his son weighs heavily upon his head. And there, behind him, was a ram with his horns caught in a thicket, and Abraham took it for a burnt offering instead of his son. The ram, with his horns caught in what was growing there, represents confusion, ignorance, rambunctious behavior, all of which must be burned away in flames lit from logs of knowledge. And the angel said, "Because you have not withheld your son, I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars, and by them all peoples will bless themselves." Children who are bound to the laws and educated have a good chance of growing up to become peaceful and productive, a blessing for everyone, reaching to the stars. And Abraham returned and dwelt at well 7. Again, there is an absence at the center of Father Abraham's life. His son is gone, hopefully rising in brilliance on a mountain of knowledge. And Abraham ends up at well 7, which is where Hagar was in the wilderness. But it is not recorded that the two ever again met. When Sarah died in Hebron, which means society, Abraham went and mourned for her, and there she was buried. Buried in society, dead to her husband and her son Isaac above. Without her, neither Isaac nor Ishmael would have been born. Sarah has completed her task, and now she has gone to her rest. And Abraham found a wife for his son Isaac from among his kinsmen. And Isaac loved her, and so was comforted after his mother's death. His wife, Rebekah, represents his mother, who promoted the life of his mind. And though the life of the mind may make one brilliant, like love, it may also make one blind, blind to what is right in front of one's face. And Isaac is later described as blind, fooled by his own family. More laughable than laughing. When Abraham died, Isaac and Ishmael buried him in Hebron. Abraham joins his wife Sarah in death. And this is the only place in the Bible where it is recorded that Isaac and Ishmael ever again came together. In this illustration, the negative space between the two takes the form of a priest-like figure with an elaborate crown, reflected up as it were from the dead Abraham below. On this occasion, the heads of Isaac and Ishmael touch, while their bodies remain separated as they whisper their prayers.